Welcome to First Responder Financial Freedom Podcast. We talk to first responders all over the nation who are investing and working on businesses outside of their first responder jobs. Our goal is to motivate and educate each other and help provide a better financial understanding for a better future. Now here are your hosts, Mike Webb, Tyler Thrush, and Aaron Foster.
All right, guys, we're back. First Responder Financial Freedom. This is the Three Stooges, Mike, me, and Tyler, me being the biggest stooge. And we got our knight in shining armor, Nathan Brooks, on here. Nathan comes to us from Kansas, where he lives on a large parcel of land with his wife and kids. He's got a fantastic background and biography. So I'm just going to read some of it off of the Bigger Pockets website that they had on there. Nathan's a co-founder and CEO of Bridge Turnkey Investments. It's based out of Kansas City. He's renovating and selling more than 100 turnkey properties per year with more than a decade of experience in real estate investing. Nathan is a seasonal investor with a large portfolio and growing business portfolio. Last year, through the Bridge Turnkey Investments, he helped investors add over $12 million in value to their real estate portfolios. So he's been crushing these numbers. He's been on a ton of podcasts. He's been on Bigger Pockets, I think, 4 times now. All the big name real estate investing podcasts, including First Responders Financial Freedom. He's been on them, and now we're blessed to have him on here. So Nate, thank you for hopping on with us. I know you got a busy schedule. So how did you get into real estate investing about a decade ago?
Absolutely. And by the way, thank you for having me on here. And I don't know if I can be a knight in shining armor with 3 fine gentlemen being called stooges. So we'll see how that goes. But I appreciate being on here for sure. It's funny because I think, like a lot of people, I found this little known book called Rich Dad Poor Dad, and it was one of those moments where you read that book and you're like, oh my gosh, is that something real? Like, is this really possible that I could, make a different change? And at the time, I was playing music professionally, and I grew up playing music since I was literally in 5th grade. And so I was sitting in a restaurant and overhearing a guy talking about real estate, and got up, went and talked to him. And within 2 or 3 weeks, I had bought my first house, and I actually bought 2 with this said business partner. It did not go very well, but that was the inception story and the first ever experience of real estate.
So the first property you purchased, was it an investment property? Was it your primary? What that like?
It was actually an investment property, and it literally, the first day I bought 1, I bought 2. So uh, I didn't really have any money. We had worked out this, this new partner, quote unquote, was supposed to bring the construction, and I was, signing for this mortgage, and this local tiny little bank and banker, there was a shyster that I came to find out later. And so basically, if you check mark any of the boxes that I would talk to, like a coaching student or a buddy investing, like, here's all the checks, here's all the things to do, and I left them all unchecked. So it's not how I'd recommend getting into that, but by any means. But I did, and I've continued to do the ready, fire, aim, which sometimes it serves me well, and sometimes not so much. Yeah, here's part to your question is, like, I literally didn't even know. I think we were thinking we were going to flip it. I ended up, having to bring in like day labor guys and contractors and trying to just figure out my way through these first 2 houses because it was a complete disaster.
But even as a disaster, I'm sure you learned a ton. Like, you learned stuff that you couldn't go to college or school and learn that just by being hands-on.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And I think you also over the course of time learn, like, oh, Aaron, I actually shouldn't be doing this because either I'm not good at it, I don't like doing it, or it's not something I enjoy. And it's taken me a long time to work through that, not just from like a deal perspective or a partner relationship, or even something that might look good on the outside and in theory it sounds like something that's good, but it doesn't really serve you long term. So I have learned many many lessons through that experience for sure.
Yeah, haven't we all? And sometimes I have to learn it more than once, which is kind of like the dumb man in
Guilty.
me, right? You know,
Guilty.
and to your point about the first deal, you know, I think I've told this story before. Like my first deal, like believe it or not, did not go as planned. But I still consider it my best deal ever just because it was the one that got that flywheel in motion. And I think so many people are afraid to jump in. How many people, and we talk about it, you know, the guys that sit at the kitchen table, it must be nice, right? And they're everywhere in life, not just around the kitchen table. So the difference that separates the people that like go out there and eventually fail forward are the ones that are willing to kind of take that little bit of a leap and figure it out, like do the day, figure out, okay, I have to go hire a day laborer. I have to do this. I have to do that. Like if you want to wait to fire before you have every aim and everything's ready, you're never going to be able to fire. So like, you know, I hear you saying basically like, yeah, it didn't go as planned. I didn't really know what I was doing and I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but I don't regret it either, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's an important realization is like, things did not go right, and they rarely always all go right, but you can't let that hold you from kind of like taking that step either.
I actually I love what you just said, and I wrote it down. First deal is still the best deal, and I love the context for that. So I'm keeping that as a note. But you know, it's interesting because when you think about, so I used to have these calls all the time with clients, and on the turnkey side. So we'd buy a house, renovate it, sell it, and I don't do a whole lot of that anymore. And we can talk about that if you want, but you know, we flipped 700 some houses in 5 or 6 years, so it's a lot. And you know, we would talk to people who, on one hand, would be like the ready, fire, aim guy, and then on the other hand would be like the analysis paralysis guy, and both of them are problematic, except like to your point, Mike, which is at least one took action. One took action and went after something. And I think, it's a nice place to find. And I really try to suggest to people like, well, hey, if you're a ready, fire, aim guy, maybe you just take one pause more and make sure you have a little more of a plan, because there's so much information now. There's so many people who can help you. And if you're an analysis paralysis guy, you need somebody who's going to come in and kick you in the butt and say, all right, you've analysis paralysis thing to death. And this is the conversation I would have all the time, which is like, all right, so it sounds like, thank you, Chris Voss, it sounds like you're never going to do anything, Tyler or Aaron, Mike. So why are we having this phone call anymore? So we can at least put them over the edge and be like, whoa, okay, but I don't know about this thing. Like, okay, let's solve that.
Yep.
Exactly.
One thing I like is that, like, so you waste enough of your time. Don't waste my time too. Either you're going to do it or you're not. Like, there's nothing I'm going to tell you that you can't look up on YouTube or Bigger Pockets or Nathan Brooks' website or wherever it might be. You can get that information now. So like at some point you're wasting your own time and then you're adding other people's time onto it too. So that's when you see a lot of when you go out and ask somebody like, hey, I need you to be my coach. Okay. So what do you need help with? Let's fix that problem. Or do you want me to just run your business for you? That's a whole different dynamic.
Yes. Well, and that's the thing. And I think, it's also easy to get that kind of greener on the other side, staring at somebody's social media or staring at somebody, posting pictures of checks and pictures in front of a Lamborghini or whatever. And these things really drive me insane, to be clear. And it's not about that at all. And go buy the car if you want it, but nobody needs to see you over and over again in front of a picture of it, And so you have like both sides of these coins. Like, well, I don't want to be like that, but we get to tell a story now, and this is where I'm so motivated, which is to say, great, let's start with what you want. Let's start with what got you excited about real estate, and let's then back into it to create whatever it is that you actually do want. And then if we can align people's motivations and align the thing that they're most excited about, then I think we can help them take more action, because then they're more more entwined with what that actual goal is, that emotional experience.
For sure, right? Because I mean, most of the time we're all looking at real estate as the vehicle to get us to where we want to go. And it's hard sometimes to get there and get rejected all day long on the phone, or to have things not go well. And if you focus on that, you're like, yeah, this is not fun. But like, for a lot of us, it's financial freedom, it's time freedom, it's, hunting, doing whatever you want to do. And I personally have to remind myself when everything's going bad, and I get people texting me yesterday that they want to sue me for repairing a line on my property that I never asked them to even touch. It's like, well, yeah, this sucks right now, but for the last year that I was getting rent checks on that property with zero problems, it was allowing me to pay for things that I want to do. That's huge. And for me, another thing you said too that made me laugh was when you use that Chris Voss thing and people do it to you, that pisses me off. I'm fine being complacent sometimes, right? Like I'll be, I'm going to do this, but there's nothing worse than, or it's actually the best thing you could have is a friend who's going to tell you, hey, you're not going to do that. I'm like, who are you to tell me I'm not going to do this? I'm okay if I'm not going to do it, but you can't tell me I'm not going to do this.
Well, it's a good gut check though, right?
Yeah.
There's something really special about that feeling. That's literally like, Tyler, hey man, we've had this conversation 10 times, and I mean, it seems like you're never going to do it. And, then you could be literally like, man, I'm not. Like, I keep thinking about this, but I'm really not. Or, if it lights you, I have a feeling the four of us in this, in these squares or rectangles, that, we're like, oh, you're going to tell me that? Oh, I'm going to show you right now.
Yeah, that's probably most of our friends. But,
yeah,
so Nathan, you went from, first off, we breezed over the fact you were a musician. Like, what were you like the Rolling Stones? Or I know a little bit more about your story, but for those that aren't familiar, like, what did that kind of look like?
Yeah, so
in a nutshell.
Absolutely. So I remember distinctly walking into, some kids really love playing sports, and I'm much more athletic and done much more, those kind of things in my 30s and 40s than I ever did in those years. And I remember walking into the choir room, which also was like the orchestra room, and there was the string bass, which is, people don't know, it's the really big one. And so I remember seeing it, and everyone in 5th grade had to start with violin, and I was like, no. I don't care about that little thing that makes those squeaky sounds. Like, give me the big one. And so I played piano and I played string bass since it was 5th grade. So I've actually played musical instruments now longer than I have not played, which is pretty wild. But so I played all the way through high school. I picked up guitar in college, and I was a music major. And so, played both in the secular and sacred world. So that's both church world and the 2 a.m. bar scene. And
yeah, you got to put this in fireman terms.
Were you a singer too? Did you sing in the choir?
Yep. So I sang. I still sing professionally. Did you? Okay, nice. Yep. So, and I love theory. So I have a music theory background and taught theory for the freshmen coming in, for multiple years in college. And then I've conducted choirs. I've gotten to sing some really amazing places, and had my song played on the radio, and recorded an album in Los Angeles, and also was a worship leader for multiple years in a couple of different places, including the largest United Methodist Church in the U.S., which happens to be here in Kansas City. So I got to do some really, really amazing things on the music side.
So that naturally leads you into real estate investing.
Right? Obviously, yeah. Music and real estate.
Sorry, go ahead, Aaron.
Right there.
So with your music, you have to. I know music too. So I tried to play the bagpipes for a long time. I can make a lot of really good duck calls. If you ever want to take me hunting with you, but no, I started playing instruments when I was a kid too, and it seems like reading was a task for me. It was hard. But like musical instruments, like that was a little bit easier for me because reading the notes is different than reading words. So it helped me focus on other things. So I don't know if you had the same experience than I did, but like once I got older, like I use music to help me focus on other things. Like even to this day, I'll listen to music while I'm doing something else. It's background noise to me now, but it helps me stay in line and on focus.
I use music all the time. So whether it was like writing my book, or, I've written blogs and stuff for a long time. If it's just in the morning, like so I'm in my home office right here, and I have Sonos. If you don't have Sonos, it's the best thing ever. I have them in, most of the rooms in my house, and you can literally on your app pull it up. So anyway, I have a sub and a couple speakers in my office here, and so I literally like hang out, play music, and just enjoy literally like start of my day to end of my day. So it is literally an integral piece.
Have you ever heard of what is it, neurodivergent music, where the sound bounces left to right?
Well, I have not heard of neurodivergent, but even from a
We're
Aaron,
turning into the
Aaron,
Joe Rogan podcast here.
Hey, man,
This is like some trippy LSD stuff here.
whatever
Aaron,
whatever rabbit hole we go down, we're just gonna end there.
that's right. We're going. I know Aaron Copeland wrote a book called What to Listen For in Music. And in that book, he talks about 3 stages. And it's been a while since I've read the book, but I remember feeling very connected to it, where it was like, on one hand, like stage 1, you're hearing it and experiencing music. And stage 2, like you're a little more aware of maybe parts. And, for me, listening to music, and maybe this is like this for you too, Aaron, and to your point of, from an audio standpoint, left and right, like I'm listening to it almost like watching The Matrix, because I'm listening to the parts, I'm thinking about the analysis of like what chords are being played and how it's played. And so you have to explain that piece. But for me, if it's not like some sort of house type of music or whatever that's just instrumental, I have a very hard time not starting to you know try to figure out musically what's actually happening.
Break it down. So here's the reason I ask is it's a type of music. If you have a symptom of neurodivergency, it's some people, I can give this same music to all 4 of us on here, right? And it might feel like floss between my ears, might feel like something good, and then it might bother you a lot. So whereas like this bothers my head and makes me uncomfortable, so I'll take the fence off. So at the firehouse of the day, I had a couple of guys listen to the music, and everybody reacted differently. So this is my way of spinning this back around: is everybody tackles their obstacles differently, and everybody looks at their problems differently, and ways to overcome them. So each guy has a specific reaction. So we're all going to react differently to whatever obstacles and problems or something that we like or dislike. So what I like about you is that you have a very wide spectrum of experience. So you've used parts of your music to focus on, on your real estate or focus on your tasks at hand. So that's one thing I like about having a podcast like this, is like Mike deals with obstacles a certain way. Tyler deals with obstacles a certain way. Obviously you do too. Like we might not all have the same way of getting there, the same path to getting to the end, but we're all going to do what's best for us and what we think is best. And we also have the ability to ask each other, say, what do you think about this obstacle? What would you do? And I think that's a big thing in real estate investing and life in general, is having people around you that will both motivate you and tell you either should have get off the pot or try this path instead. So have you had other investors or other coaches in your life, or have you figured this out yourself?
Well, first of all, nice, beautiful job of bringing that together. So you did a beautiful job with that, man.
Thanks, sir.
Sincerely.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. I love words, and I love context, and I think that's awesome. So, and you're right. Everybody approaches everything differently. So when I started, I did not have a coach. I didn't really understand that. I've really taken like a 180 swing from this, because now, like, I picked up golf last year, and literally the first thing I did was hire a coach and have clubs fitted, because I was like, why am I going to do this if I can't? I'm all in or I'm not in, period. And so, but early on, I didn't understand that, because from a mindset perspective, I had a broke person's mindset. And that's a responsibility of us of individuals, as we experience things in our life, and we get to say, okay, well, what is it that's creating this like mindset? So I'm like, I can figure it out. I can figure it out. Well, guess what? Sure, you can figure it out, but I am as successful only because of the amazing relationships and masterminds and like countless hours and books I've read and podcasts I've listened to, and people like you guys, who we have these conversations where we get to actually be vulnerable and have real conversations about the shit that's really actually matters, or that we're stuck. And so, yes, I mean, I literally have a handful of people that I trust and respect, that I can call it anytime, night or day, to this day. Whether I've done 50 million or 100 million or however many deals, it doesn't even matter. We all need help. We all have things that we need to work on. And so, yeah, I can't tell people enough to have that mentor, coach, and someone that they trust to have those conversations with.
It's funny too, Aaron, because and Mike, we know in the fire station, if you were going to tell somebody you're going to pay some guy to teach you something, like immediate response is scam. and like for me, for a long time too, like, growing up on Bigger Pockets, it's like there's so much information there, and there's a slight tilt against paid education or mentorship, stuff like that.
Mhm.
But Nathan, what you said about the golf coach, right? Now you have so much proof that you knew, I'm going to start something new. I can either figure this out on my own, or I can hire a coach, get fitted, and dramatically reduce the learning curve, right?
Dramatically. I mean, I shot an 86 this year in year 2. And, I remember my coach saying, like, the first lesson I have, I'll never forget this, right? So this guy works for the weather service, but he's also a pro golfer, and he's real chill, which is great because I need somebody chill and direct. And I remember, he's like, take a couple swings, let's see what you got going on, Nathan. And I'm, well over 6 feet, athletic guy. And he's like, well, you pretty much messed up everything in the swing, so we have a lot of opportunity to get better, And I'm just thinking, wow, okay, well, this is not exactly how I thought this first, conversation was going to go, but here, and then 6 months later, he's like, wow, like you're hitting literally like 6 or 7 of these things in the swing because we worked on it over and over and over and over. And to your point, Tyler, I think there are scammers out there, and so. But we all have to have that ability to say, okay, well, what is my filter, and what is my objective within this education? And some people, there were years where I literally spent 6 figures on education just in real estate and coaching, and it made me lots and lots of money. But we had to make those choices as we entered into those things.
One thing I liked about your coach is he didn't phrase it in a negative way. He phrased it in a positive way. So he didn't make you feel like a less than. So I see a lot of so for fitness training, we'll say a lot of people, a lot of fitness trainers are like, you need to do this, this, and this. And it's like, nah, you're not really training them. Like, you're just trying to show them that you can do something better than they can. Like, you're not actually a good coach, not showing them the benefits and the ways things go together and blah, blah, blah. Like, he actually said, okay, we can fix this. Let's focus on these dynamics and we can make you better. So if you don't have a coach out there, if you just hire somebody, and I see a lot of these scams too, just like all of us do, like they'll upsell you, like, oh, sign up for this. Oh, now sign up for this too. This is part 3. Sign up for this. Like all these masterminds. I'm like, those are garbage. I just had a buddy of mine at the firehouse. He was like, hey man, I'm looking at doing wholesaling. I just learned about it. What do you think about it? I was like, well, it's been very time consuming and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, he's like, well, I got a lady in one of my church groups or whatever the groups it was. He's like, she wants to charge, I think it was like $400 or $500 for course 1, and then for the master course it was another like $500 or $600. I was like, bro, we're at the firehouse for 24 hours. I can sit here and teach you all of this stuff for free, and I'll probably teach you more than she can, and I won't take your freaking money. Maybe pay for a soda later on, but that's just because I'm a cheap ass.
Well, I'm going to push back a little bit on that because I've paid for coaches, and I've been in multiple 5-figure masterminds. In those relationships
are worth 6 figures, 7 figures,
8, 10 figures. I mean, I've literally done multiple. Well, so I'll give you an example. Today, this morning, I was a little late to this recording because I went and closed on 2 Airbnb houses. They'll do combined about $150K in revenue next year, $1 million in real estate. And then after this podcast, I'm going to go and close on a almost $2 million multifamily deal with another different bank. And I don't say that to sound like I'm impressive. I say it because neither of those things would have come together without other people helping me through them. And so I asked the wager question, which is, from an 80-20 perspective in leverage, is the $500 course or $1,000 course or $20,000 coach, is the leverage equitable to the result? And if it's not, that is the answer, rather than just having, paying for some sort of coach or some sort of course, like what is the actual result that the outcome is expected, and then can we truly actually deliver that if you or I are putting the effort into that thing.
Yeah, because I think, I mean, you know, Mike and I were in Fuel. I still am. And like, there's a bunch of stuff. And it's like, you could easily say 10, 100x, right, Mike? I mean, for Fuel, for sure, it's 100x. And at
Yeah.
first I was super scared to do it because I was like, well, hey, man, this is like, I think at that time it was like 10, 15 grand, whatever it was. And
Yeah,
that was
for
a
the
big
year.
deal for me. Yeah, for the year, sorry. And then now, to your point, Nathan, I saw a post a couple days ago on social media like, hey, how much are you planning on spending for coaching in 2023? And I forget who it was, but I was like, oh, this is interesting. I love watching things like this, and it's like a good way to be like a fly on the wall. And I saw everybody post it, and the ones that said zero, my first thought was, are they proud that they're spending zero because they're like not going to get taken, or is it they just don't trust people? And for me, I never wanted to spend money at first, and now my goal is to continually spend more money. And to your point, my thing is just like any other investment. If I spend X, what will be my return or my expected return? And it doesn't always have to be monetary, right? Like there's things that I can get from other from these masterminds that may not give me a direct, you know, monetary value, but it's hard for me to put that into words where people trust it until you do it. Like, hey, after the first year of Fuel, I was like, oh man, this is big. And I'm sure, Nathan, you're in different masterminds in real estate, same thing. It allowed you to do deals of sizes that you probably would not have imagined when you first started, and you continue to grow. I just think for those that are going to do it, do your due diligence, look for people who will give you an honest and unbiased review without an affiliate link. and then, you know, go from there. That's my biggest thing. There's somebody who bashes gurus a lot on the internet, but yet they're always promoting. Him and his dad are like the biggest guys up. Guru. However, they have an affiliate link for every single service that they're telling you about. So just, I don't know, do your due diligence. I could not speak highly enough about coaching, masterminds, mentorships. Just do your research first. Right?
And there's different coaches for different levels and different, we'll call it asset classes or skills. You're not going to, it's a golf coach and a real estate coach. It's not the same coach, right? So you look at remember the post that it was like, hey, my budget's only like $500 a month. Or what would you do? And I was like, I would go get in the best room I could for $500 a month. And everybody's like, it was like crickets, you know? And I remember Tyler was like, dude, that's solid, because like so many people are like, oh, I can go buy 20 postcards for that. Dude, I'd rather spend the $500 and get the conversations with Ed Milet on Zoom every month or whatever you were doing through Arte, you know that. But anyways, like we have definitely preached about that. And the way I translate that now for like folks in the first responder community, like you enter for the most part an academy, whether it be police, fire, corrections, whatever, with maybe zero knowledge, maybe some knowledge. Maybe you watch Chicago Fire once, like, and that's what you think the fire department's like, and you're in for a rude awakening, right? You graduate recruit school, you have the basics, right? You've read Rich Dad Poor Dad, you get the concept, right? Now you have a probationary period with a mentor, a senior man, a field training officer, whatever it is. That's your coach. The coach is cutting down your learning curve so that in the next 10 to 12 months of your probation, you don't get dead, or you significantly reduce the chances of getting dead, right? Same thing. You take that coach, and now you have the basics of, oh, I want to buy rentals, I want to flip, I want to do Airbnbs, whatever I want to golf. And now they sit there and say like, hey, we're going to help you be successful faster. Could you be successful fumbling through BiggerPockets, YouTube, and the 4 million Instagram accounts and TikToks and what? Of course. But you're paying for the speed, and you're paying for that, like he said, the wager, right? So again, do your due diligence. We've talked about it a lot. Like, but yes, be scrupulous. Be let me see HUDs, buddy, you know, before you said I want to take my money. Like I want to see there's the snake oil salesmen, and then there's the guys that are super genuine, and you just have to understand what it is that looks like. That's all.
And to your point, Mike, what you said, you know, there's different coaches for different things. And, you know, I remember at one point we had, you know, we were in multiple masterminds, and I literally have a business coach that's helping us like from a production standpoint. We have, you know, I have a personal coach that's in like both me personally and as a executive, sitting in the CEO seat. So, I mean, there's a lot of different ways, I think about the Navy SEALs all the time. I've been obsessed with them for forever, probably, but think about all those different courses and, BUD/S, you hear Navy SEALs talk about all the time, BUD/S was super hard and it clears out most of the people, but actually operating, and clearly I'm not a Navy SEAL, this makes and I've not had this experience, but they all say like it's harder operating than it is going through that. But the training prepared them to be better students, better formed to then, solve those problems and going to those really detailed schools. And it's just like in real estate, there's a million ways you can do deals, but you don't need to first, day one, be a wholesaler and a fix and flipper and a, Airbnb person in building new construction. Like it's crazy. So pick one and then find somebody that can mentor and help you in solving that problem.
I got something for you. So there's a book called Before They Were SEALs, They Were Frogs, and it's by Bill Dawson. So Bill Dawson was he was in class 1 of the SEALs. He was a retired DC firefighter. He just passed away about 3 years ago, and I got to do a bunch of events with him. And then yesterday I was in a parade in Annapolis, and I got to stand around the Medal of Honor guys, and I was reading all their biographies. And like as I was standing there, I was reading like their Wikipedias about them, and like the stuff they did and do is absolutely amazing. But one of the things that I'd like to highlight, I got a bunch of SF buddies, and they can't work by themselves. They work as teams, and they have a specialty in that team. So it's the same thing as I'm bringing it back around to the conversation earlier. It was like, you need to have people you can work with and bounce ideas off to further your goals. Now, it could be real estate, it could be finances, it could be a better, healthier, happier family life, better relationship with your wife and your friends, your parents, and whatever else. But like, you need to have defined goals in place. And like you guys were saying earlier, the return on investment isn't just financial. It could be emotional, spiritual, physical, sexual, whatever it might be. That's your goal. So surround yourself with somebody, and not everybody can fulfill all those requirements that you need that you're trying to get to the end goal. Make sure you have somebody in place that actually knows the answers to them, and you're not wasting your time spinning your wheels. And I guess that's what goes back to my buddy who was doing the wholesaling thing, is don't waste your time spinning wheels with somebody who just wants to take your money. You want to have somebody who's going to invest in you and want to see your betterment. So that's one of the good things about having groups like this and guys around us like this. But let's transition now. We're a half hour into this thing. I don't want
we've got to his first 2 houses.
Yeah, all we got is his first 2 houses. Let's focus on now. Like I know you obviously had major growth, like 600 or 700 houses in 5 or 6 years is what it sounds like, right? So now, let's talk about now. Like you just dropped the bombshell saying, I'm going to go buy a multifamily unit when I close here. I just finished on 2 real estate or short-term rentals. How did you run the numbers on the properties you're working on just today?
Okay, great. So my goal this year was to take down 5 Airbnbs. I think I actually ended up with closer to 10. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but these 5 are with a specific partner. And so I have built a community in Kansas City. It's called the Bridge Real Estate Investing Meetup, and we have almost 13,000 people in our Facebook group now. And so we are doing live events. At one point I was doing them every month. We were having 120, 150 people live every month, speakers coming in from all over. And so the community was built around doing deals, having relationships. And so the deals that I bought were both from wholesalers I know personally. We bought them. Well, actually, no, that's not true. One was from a wholesaler, and actually one is pretty crazy. So it's from a bank, a lender relationship of mine, and a hard money lender who called me and said, "Hey, we have a house in default, and would you come in and help us in this situation?" Which is pretty cool. And so we were able to not only help them, help us. And it was a house that we'd love to buy. It's almost 3,000 square feet. It's in a really cool part of town, and so it actually appraised for more than what we put it under contract for. They're helping us carry a second, so I really have virtually no money into it. And so it's funny when you start thinking about these things where it's like, okay, now it's a creative deal, it's a relationship deal, it's also grounded in facts, and a bank actually wanted to take that loan. And so it's pretty interesting putting that one together.
So I was talking to somebody a couple of days ago about they're trying to buy a multifamily in DC, and it's in a really, really rough part of town, like the part of town where you're cleaning bloods off the front steps and like there's bolt holes in the side of the building. And I told him, I was like, this is a really, dangerous position, blah, 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 blah. Like, if you're going to come out of pocket a lot of money. And he's like, no, actually, I'm getting a second position lien or like second position loan on it. He's like, so I'm not really coming out of pocket a whole lot. And I was like, that's creative. I like that. Can you explain what that is? Because most people have never heard of it or don't know how to do it.
Yeah, sure. There's a number of ways. By the way, just because you can get the money doesn't mean you should buy it. So let's just put that out there. I can speak from experience on that one. So from the second position, there's a number of ways you can do that. In this case, is the lender, excuse me, carrying a second mortgage. So there's a first mortgage lien, which will be the bank that did the refinance today. And then this lender is going to come in a second position. So it's still on that, it's carried as a second mortgage. And it's actually recorded just like that first mortgage is. And, in this case, it worked because it'll still cash flow. We get into a great deal. We have, 55,000 or so in equity in the house day one because of how we bought it. So that worked out great. You can also do a seller carryback, which is, where say you get a mortgage, but you ask that seller to actually carry a portion of that purchase price, and so they could do it as a second mortgage on that as well. And there's a lot of different ways you can kind of skin that cat. You could also, some people do loans where say there's a bank loan and somebody comes in and brings their self-directed IRA or something. So you can do, pretty much any kind of creative ways to structure it. But in essence, it's a first mortgage and a second mortgage, or, two different loans that are carrying that property.
What's the benefit? And Tyler, since Tyler does mortgages, Tyler, what's the benefit of having a second mortgage?
It reduces your capital outlay, right? So you're able to get into a property without having to put additional money down. And that's the biggest reason why, and like Nathan said, commercial banks and commercial deals, they're much more open to it, right? With a straight like conventional residential transaction, seconds are usually, a home equity line of credit or maybe a fixed rate second. But for a commercial, it allows a lot of deals to get done. And I have friends who a lot of the time will have, private equity firms, insurance companies, things like that, doing these for these larger scale deals. And it just reduces the investor's capital outlay, which in turn usually allows them to buy more properties as long as it's still cash flows. And when Nathan was talking, that's why I love commercial so awesome, because it's based off of the asset. And they're like, hey man, you're limited by your creativity and the fact of how well this cash flows. Outside of that, like there's really nothing that's off limits. And I mean, my biggest immediate would answer would be, like I just said, just the being able to limit your capital outlay in deals.
Yeah, and I will also say that I am not always a proponent of being levered like that either. So normally in my stuff, I am not in, and I think there could also be, hey Tyler, what's the downside in this? And there's definitely a downside, which is, you're highly levered. If something goes sideways, there's issues. So I go into this eyes wide open. I'm well aware of that. I have, capital to back it up. We have other investment properties that carry as well, and a lot of equity from a portfolio perspective in that portfolio. So, it's important people think about not just like, oh gosh, I can get into the deal, but we really think about, certainly from a military perspective, from I would assume firefighting perspective as well. It's like, all right, we need to have contingencies on if stuff doesn't go well here, and when we understand what those risks are too.
For sure, right? And like you said, you wouldn't do this you wouldn't want to have a second on every single property on your portfolio. You want to diversify. Some you may own free and clear. Some you may have, high loan to value because let's say the cash flow is so high it's worth it. Some you have in the middle. And somebody asked me yesterday. He's actually, he's a retired Marine. He's on my job, and we were talking about different loan products. And I said, well, sometimes what you'll want to do is you'll want a 30-year note, right? Because you want to pay down that equity on the property. Other situations situations may dictate where you do an interest only loan that allows you to get the most positive cash flow. And you want to kind of sprinkle these different things throughout your portfolio for different reasons, meeting different needs, to where you're well-rounded, well-diversified. And like, let's say you did need to pay that property off that had that second. Maybe you have one that you own free and clear, or you have very little leverage. You can increase the leverage on that property, decrease the leverage on the property that you just were referring to, and kind of even all of your risk out.
Exactly. So Nathan, the other ones that you're working on right now, can you go over them with us too? Like what's the how did you find them? The one you're closing after this podcast. How'd you find that one? That sounds like a bigger deal.
It's a bigger deal. It's not huge. So it's a 20 unit. We actually built it. So we have we did the horizontal and vertical on this one. And so we've had partners in that. And, there's some people that are really, against partners. I've actually found that having the right partners have really increased my capacity, not only to do better deals, but to have more fun doing them. And I've really made a focus in my life to, create like the most awesome life I can live. And this is a bit of a tangent, but I'm just going to mention it. That because I'm the knight in shining armor, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Because some people have these like bucket lists, and I was asked this the other day, and so it was like, what's on your bucket list? And I was like, nothing. If I shows up, I go do it. And it's one of those things where I think all of this conversation, and I promise I'll come right back to that deal, but just like we get to create whatever we want. And those relationships and those opportunities come more and more when not only we're not focused on just serving ourselves or serving other people, and then we're doing the right things in those deals. And so so I'm bringing it back, Aaron, like you've done such a beautiful job of. In this case, we met. Sending it back. We met these wonderful partners, and my partner and I were able to bring certain things to these deals. And so, time, experience are two things you can't buy, and you have to earn them. And so we got to bring those in capital in this case. And so in a short period of time, we put together multi-million-dollar new construction development deal, and had a solid chunk of equity in it as well. And so it ended up being a really great deal for everybody. And I want to just add one more thing to that, if you don't mind. I think a lot of people focus on cash flow, and cash flow is important, and especially in the inflationary environment and watching these interest rates continue to tick up. We need to double and triple check our stuff. But as someone who has done real estate for a long time, and I have done and made millions of dollars in real estate, I have not made millions of dollars in cash flow. I've made millions of dollars in equity over time. And, people obsess about one aspect of real estate instead of realizing there's all these different things that create wealth. And we get to take them all and analyze them all. And especially as we go into this new market, in this new, into 2023, 2024, we don't know exactly what the Fed's going to do. And people are going to have a harder time doing deals if we were only obsessed about what this cash flow number was. Versus like, what are all those things doing, and how do we actually create what it is that we want long term?
One of the things you mentioned is it's not just cash flow, and there's a lot of equity in your properties. So once you have equity in real estate, banks are more likely to give you other loans and better rates because they see that you have enough spread in other properties. I've gone down that rabbit hole before. Mike and I use it the same bank, and that's actually helped. I won't say springboard me, but project me forward, saying they know all the assets I have here. They know the equity position I have here. So they're more likely to give me money on this deal and this deal and this deal because of that. And it's also relationships because we've been working with them for so long. Now, I saw on Bigger Pockets, I think it was earlier today on Instagram, they posted this guy. He had tweeted that he has not used a touch of his cash flow from any of his properties this year. He's going to cash out his cash flow, and then he's going to use it to buy a new asset coming up in the new year. Like I always have a nest egg, and I have a specific number in mind for all my properties. And once I get past that, I just save that money, save that, and I put it into a new investment. Now it might be, a laser that I have sitting next to me that I can etch metal and guns and knives and and woodwork and acrylic and everything else, or it might be another property. Like it just depends on the year and what my focus on. And so like Mike, he's changed his focus from single family houses and multifamily houses into storage unit facilities. And now he's learned that. And I think he's bought 4, if I remember, Mike.
3. But we're in conversation to buy 2 more right now. So
I might as well just say 5 because I know he's going to buy another 2 more in the next year anyway. So I mean,
well, Mike, it's not really it's really not the number it's the square footage that I'm focused on. Right. I'd rather just have like 2 50,000 square feet each or something. But Nathan, you said something about horizontal and vertical. Could you just touch on that real quick? Because that's not something we've talked about much, as like the vertical stack and like vertically integrated and whatnot. So can you just what is that for dummies?
Yeah, well, there's 2 different things. You actually hit on 2 different things. So there's like a capital stack, which is its own thing, right? So you'd have like a base loan of, and I'm not super skilled on like the big deals, but because there's words like mezzanine debt and these things that this is not my world, but
waterfalls and all sorts of crazy TLC bullshit.
So in syndication TLC, don't go chase the Lord.
I didn't expect to go there in this podcast, but we're there. We're going to start singing along.
Nailed it.
Hey man, buckle up. You never know where this thing's going.
Nailed it.
Yeah, just put that buckle on.
Yeah.
So obviously in syndication, there's totally different ways you can structure the way the capital comes out. So like you have an 8 pref, which is, everybody gets paid 8% before anything else, and then capital stack. And then you can split it up any number of ways to infinity after that. But what I was referring to was the horizontal and vertical construction. So for instance, we actually did a deal this year where we only did the horizontal. So we did a 99 duplex lot development and actually had the largest exit I've ever had in a deal personally. And so we literally only did the ground and sold those lots. And, it was a multi-million-dollar deal exit. And so the horizontal is just literally anything underground. So we're putting in the utilities, we're putting in the sewers, putting in the power, putting in curbs and gutters and sidewalks and all that stuff. And then the vertical being anything that touches the ground, foundation, to putting a roof on a house and so forth.
Oh, roofs on a house. It's a touchy subject for me right now. I just had some bad contractors who screwed up my personal roof. So now we're going through some stuff. So contractors, they're hiring a lot of these guys who have no business being on roofs or doing the jobs that they're doing. So make sure they have their license, make sure they're licensed and bonded. I did all that, and it still came to bite me in the butt because nobody on the job site spoke English. So 3 hours into a roofing job, we've had some issues. So DC, Dr. Joseph Asamoah, he's a big podcast guy as well. He's a big DC guy. He does a lot of, we'll say, vertical renovations. So he'll buy a 3-level property. He'll dig the basement out and off the top, and now he has a 5-unit building, and he'll Section 8 either the whole building or does a condo conversion. There's more than one way to skin a cat. I'm looking at converting one of my properties into either subdividing some of the space off or building on it. I haven't decided which one yet. But it's one of those things like, what's the final and best usage of my time and my numbers? Like, where is my $1 going to make $2 or $1 going to make $3? I don't want to spend $1 and lose 50 cents. That's where your education comes in and investing in that. So
I would also say, good. Me.
Good.
I would also say to what end, because even if you could do it, is it worth the pain in the ass factor of digging out that basement and the cost versus could you have gone and done something? And I've learned this over and over the hard way, unfortunately, but I'm really good at understanding how to buy, this house that's a box, and I can do it over and over in my sleep. And I like doing it and I enjoy doing it. And especially in the Airbnb space where we can 10 or 20 or 30x our return on investment in those deals. It's crazy. Not like why I'm obsessed about all these other things when I could have gone and done this 1 or 2 things really, really well. And so, that's what I would think about for you, Aaron, or anybody in that situation is like, okay, well, do you have the guys? I'm going to pick on you. You're already having trouble with the roofer, right? So it's like in that situation, do you really like managing the contractor, or can you bring in a contractor as a partner who helps you do those things, or whatever that might be, and really living in that lane that we enjoy doing and that we have the skills and capacity. And Jim Collins says, get it, want it, and capacity to do it.
Yeah. So there was some extenuating circumstances for me. I've got no problem managing contractors. This one was just there's a whole
right,
nother story, but that's a whole nother podcast, a whole nother
That's a
conversation.
7-figure skill set if you enjoy managing contractors.
I know, right?
Everybody always wants to be like, hey, what should I do to be successful in real estate? Dude, become a really good contractor. Actually, you don't even have to become that good. Just become somewhat good.
Show up.
Just
stay
show
sober,
up.
mostly.
The biggest obstacle for this
do
one,
what you
though,
say.
is the biggest obstacle for this one. I don't mind, as long as it's a good contractor and you can have a conversation with them, because the communication is the biggest key for all types of investing. It doesn't matter if it's this or our day job or W-2s or life in general. Like, it's communication. So if you get a good contractor to communicate, then you can go places. The problem with this one is that nobody spoke English on site until 3.5 hours after it started. So I'm texting and calling the leader of the subs and the insurance company and everybody else, and they're like, okay, we'll be on site. And it's like, it was a debacle. It was a new experience for me that I learned from, and I'll use it in my future endeavors.
Dude, you got to use Google Translate.
So I used to.
You do that on Scene a lot.
I speak a little bit of Spanish, so I got enough to where they were like, "Yeah, no habla." So I started speaking Spanish to them. They're like, "Oh, Gringo speaks a little bit of Spanish. Let's go ahead and get the foreman on site." And I think that was actually the final straw to get somebody on site who could communicate better than what I could. So the communication is a big deal in every aspect of real estate and investing in general and your life. So Nathan, we're coming up on 51 minutes. I'm sure we can do another hour, but I think we're going to push back your $1 million listing closing. I don't want to do that. So what it can wait. My man. All right. We got you singing, we got you dancing. This is an awesome podcast. I'm having a blast. So what in your future? So we've gone over what you've done in the past. We've gone where you're at right now. In your future, you're doing a book launch. I want to touch on that because that's important. Tell me about the book you have going on. I know you've done a bunch of stuff, podcasts and book signing or book deals, and now what's next? What are you working on now? And what's next?
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you bringing it up. I have it sitting right here. It's been in my house now for like a week and a half, so it's interesting when you how many books we've read, that that make an impact, and I have, my desk is littered with books all over here. I'm not going to put them all on the screen, but so I had obsessed about writing a book for years, and I'd had pretty good connections in Bigger Pockets and such, and ended up not having it published with them. But I didn't write it as well. First of all, I actually wrote the book. This is really important to me, that it wasn't some copywriter, ghostwriter somewhere. So I wrote the book and hired a coach, and I spent multiple months in preparation, and I wrote the book in 19 days, 72,000 words. And I went back and read it, and I hated it. And I ended up rewriting the entire book again. Hilarious, since it's called the No Quitters Guide, and I had to No Quitters guide myself through that, because when you write it once and you don't want to write it again. And so, but I want it to be the absolute best. It's not a top of lead funnel. It's literally like I want to make an impact. So the spirit of the book was literally someone who says, gosh, I don't know if I can do that, or how do I change my life? I'm tired of this thing. I'm tired of this situation. I'm tired of this job. And so it's I kind of think of myself as like the real estate philosopher, and I wanted to not only put it in terms of a real estate 101 book, which there are a couple of chapters on that, but it's like, how do I actually go about changing my mindset? What is my belief of what real estate is and isn't? And then how do I prepare myself to be successful? Because I think a lot of people are afraid of that, even though they would never actually say it. What does it mean to be successful, and how do I go about doing that? So, it's called the No Quitters Guide, and I actually, it's published with Morgan James Publishing, so I have a legit publisher, and it comes out January 10th.
January. That's just in time for my birthday. I'll put it on my my
We'll have to make
Amazon.
sure we get the link. Where can they buy wherever books are sold? Amazon, or is there a preferred place we can get that listed?
I'm so glad you asked that. So you can go to noquittersguide.com. So there's a link for that, but also it is available anywhere books are sold. But it would be extraordinarily helpful for purchases through Barnes & Noble because the more we get the love through Barnes & Noble, the more that they give us the love on the shelf. So that's
Return on investment.
extremely helpful. Yeah.
So you would classify it more as a we'll call it comprehensive, for lack of a better term, self-help, not necessarily real estate strategy and tactics.
Not X's and O's.
Yeah. Absolutely. You know, it was one of those things. So it's funny. Brandon Turner wrote the foreword to this book, and anybody, he was the former podcast host of Bigger Pockets, and it was kind of cool. In the foreword, he wrote, you know, you can go read, you know, a bunch of real estate books, or you could just come and start with this one. And I was like, all right, Brandon, well, I'm gonna keep that as the quote of the, you know. But in all seriousness, it was, you know, it was something that I didn't want to have. Like, for instance, you go read Rich Dad Poor Dad. It's like, okay, well, what do I do? You know, how do I actually structure a life that I want? In the second half of the title is, you know, crushing real estate, investing and building an extraordinary life. And I didn't want it just to be about making money, because I think we see that in the real estate space all the time, like making, you know, fancy pictures and or fancy cars and fancy houses. And I say this over and over ad nauseum. And I live in a beautiful house, and I have a fancy 911 sitting in my garage, but one Airbnb house pays for that car. And it's what I wanted. Like, I don't need to show it off. I don't care if anybody knows I have it. I like driving
it's pretty.
Thank you.
You were just getting it retuned whenever we were hiking.
Oh, yeah.
On our nature walk, as my friends like to call it.
Yeah, it was quite the nature walk, wasn't it? It's a whole new podcast there. But, you know, so anyway, that's all that to say. I'm fired up about this book coming out and excited to make an impact for people.
Yeah, you're a bigger guy, man. I'm kind of surprised you fit in a 911. My cousin has one too, and he's a tall fella. He drives like an ape.
Well, you know, so the 911, you know, you basically have, like, the seat comes down, and then I have it as far back and down as I can, you know, have it in the car. But there was nothing keeping me from buying that car. I was gonna shack it, you know, like him getting into cars, or, you know, I remember those commercials. But and it's a 7-speed manual, so I want to make sure it's clear that I bought the manual version of 911.
Good for you.
What you're saying is a millennial can't steal it, is what you're saying.
Yes, or many in our age.
I was going to say many. So Nathan, that's first off, congratulations, because I can't imagine. I don't know what 72,000 words looks like in a book, but that sounds like a lot. Like. So that I'm sure wasn't an easy task, like you have alluded to. You know, I don't think I really have like this grand plan to write a book, but I've always thought 2 book ideas I thought would be cool. One would be like, do you remember the Chicken Soup for the Soul book series? I always thought it'd be cool to kind of take like a first responder spin on it and like write different little stories. Like, hey, this is Ian Horowitz, this is Aaron Foster, this is Tyler, this is so-and-so, and this is like their story, because there's so much of that that I think would just serve well and, like you said, make an impact, because all it takes is one of those stories to resonate with somebody to maybe be the catalyst for some change in their life, whatever that looks like, whether it be financially or what. So and then the other one I always thought I would always like to do, but like just like the first one, have no clue where to start, probably because I don't have a coach, is like a kids entrepreneurial book series or coloring book series, like mainly, you know, for the truckies. Like, we got the coloring book ones, and then like we have the other stuff like, hey, because we grow up reading all these books, which are great, like My Side of the Mountain and all that crap, but like, you know, I think about like how Jocko Willink has that Way of the Warrior Kids series, and you know, like that type of like grassroots growing up reading that kind of stuff could really plant some seeds that like generationally could like just change a ton, right?
Well,
You plant those seeds with these kids at 5, 6, 8, 10 years old, and now they make Elon Musk look like small bananas, like or
well,
so.
first of all, Mike, you should write those books because they both sound amazing. Uh, and of course, I think, what is it, 1% of the people that want to write a book write or whatever. But second of all, Andy Frisella and a good buddy of mine, Tim Bratz, both have some kids books that are entrepreneurial based as well. So I think it's cool, and I think we should start momentum. And by the way, there could be the No Quitters Guide to the kiddos as well.
There you
So
go.
believe me, it's on my brain. So I like where your head's at.
It's huge, Mike. To your point, so my daughter's read Jocko's books. Like, she's 10 years old, read them multiple times now. And then so last night I'm sitting downstairs and she walks up to me with a journal, like I have that right in every single day, and she let me read it, which was surprising. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then I read it. I was like, well, if you think that the kids are not listening to what you're doing and they're watching you and they're not reading it, because I was like, holy crap. And I looked at her, I said, hey, you are 32 years ahead of where I am. This is phenomenal. Keep it up. And we talked about it because there's the Tuttle twins too. They write a lot of kids books and stuff like that, and it's huge, man. I think, like you said, Mike, I think I was looking at your behind your head on top of your board right there where you said legacy, and that's what all of that lends itself to, right? Is just, dude, I never knew any of this.
Yeah.
And we said, hey, why don't we do a coloring book for kids? Same thing we talked about at dinner the other night. Let's do a coloring book for kids about entrepreneurship, because it's not taught and it's so life-changing. And for all the little kids out there that want their 911 in their garage, I mean, dude, that's the fun stuff. And you look back, and I was going to ask you, like, the first time you got in that car, it's like you look around and you're like, holy shit, I did it. Like, I
Memorable experience.
Yeah.
Well, so here's the crazy part. And yes, and it's the third 911 I've owned. And the other ones I bought were a little bit older. And this one's a 17 4S. It's twin turbo model. And I bought it having never driven it out of Texas. And it's funny, like now I would imagine, like today, bought another house, cool. And it's cool. Like, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't so I had the ability to buy that car, and I wasn't even home when it was delivered. So I bought it sight unseen. It was delivered and I wasn't there. And I just remember, like, the first time getting into that car and you like start it up, and when you drive a manual, you like put it in neutral and make sure you like don't run the car through the garage, and man, the muffler, like the exhaust system in this car, just now I just want to go drive my car. Yeah.
Well,
Right,
but it makes you, like, you hit that point. You're like, you know what? Like, that car, to somebody just driving like it's a car, but to you, it's so much more than a car. And I'd say that about a watch or whatever, But to Tyler, your point, like, I put that there as a constant reminder, and I finally fixed the C that kept tipping over. But like, did you ever watch the video, The Last Lecture? About you need to watch it. It is The Last Lecture. It's from a professor at Carnegie Mellon, and he delivers, in essence, a TED Talk, and packed auditorium. And at the end of it, he's like, and the funny thing, he had cancer and he was going to die. And he's like, the funny thing is, you all thought this was for you. It was for his kids. So, like,
oh man,
your kids could read this book. They can watch these shows. Like, that's legacy,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we're wrapping up on an hour here, and just for the book topic, my father-in-law wrote a kid's book, and that's one of the precursors for me. I was like, if he can write it, I can write it too. So it does have an impact.
Back to that. Tell me I can't do it. Watch this.
Yeah.
Here.
Okay, I know you were trying to get to what's happening now, so I'll make a very tight bow on this, Aaron. So I'm actually focused on doing less deals, focused on bigger deals, and focus on more and more time. So the last couple of years I've spent 30, 40, 50 days a year hunting, being on the outdoors, and I'm focused on doing either stuff that I really love, that's high leverage dollar wise, or it's high leverage fun and experience wise. And so I'm not trying to flip 150 houses. I'm doing a couple development deals a year that are in the 7 and 8 figures. and doing some coaching with a couple of friends of mine just because I really enjoy doing it. And then buying Airbnbs because I think they're awesome. And Airbnb number 10 with this particular partner will be a mountain house. So 2023, I will own a mountain house somewhere, and just doing stuff that's fun and that I like doing and that brings joy to me and an opportunity for other people.
Bandwidth, capacity, and quality of life. Those are like the three ideal things. We talk about that all the time. I actually got my Horton out. You can see it behind me because I want to spend more time this year going out and just shooting, even if I'm not hunting. But it's like now I'm trying to find the bandwidth and capacity to do to fit that in. So I'm with you. I get it.
It's like the thinking time. I've learned you just have to schedule it, man. If you don't put it on the calendar, just forget it. Like it's with everything. Dude, I put a lot more on the calendar than I used to. Let's put it that way.
Me too.
Dude, well, this is crazy. Like, I feel like we just got started. Like, I don't even feel like we scratched the surface on the real estate aspect. Like, we went from your first 2 houses to 8-figure development deals, but really didn't hit a lot of the grit in between that probably was a lot of the backbone of the book, I would imagine, because I would imagine that in between is where you got kicked in the teeth multiple times. Not that you probably still don't now, but
definitely do.
I can see why BP had to have you on 4 times. It's like Nathan Brooks, most interesting man in the world.
Let's do it again, guys. I'm totally down. And anytime, if you just need a 4th man in or you got one down, just call me. I'll be there.
That sounds awesome.
Awesome. That's a great offer, and we appreciate it. We'll probably take you up on that. So
absolutely. Especially because you got a nicer mic than we do and nicer setups, and you can teach me how to use mine.
Yeah.
Well, we can solve that too. And certainly when we're in person, we'll have to have a bourbon, a cigar, or whatever you guys' version of that. So I'd love it.
Bourbon infused.
I'm going to wrap up with the last 2 questions for you. And we ask everybody this. It's kind of like the bigger podcast. So the first one is, if you could go back and give your younger self advice, and it doesn't mean if you're 20, 30, 15 years old, what would you give your younger self advice about?
Yep.
Real estate or life?
Yep. So I have more fun. And I think it's so hard for us to learn to love ourselves first, because it's much easier to love and appreciate everyone else when we love and care for ourselves. And so that journaling, that meditation, that, really doing the time with ourselves. And like Mike said, literally scheduling that time, being in the woods, you get to work through those things. And then number 2, I would have kept more real estate. And I'm preaching that to this moment. I did the math on it over and over, and I'd have another 0 on my net worth. And I'm just, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not doing them just to do them. I'm not doing them to sell a bunch of stuff. I'm doing it because I'm excited about it, and I'm gonna keep it. And I'm keeping everything that I have, and just selling only a couple.
All right, my last question and my second question is going to be, what's your why? You seem like a wholesome, good-hearted, hardworking, blue-collar man from the Midwest. What's your why, other than your beautiful family? What's your why?
100%. Well, I have a few things. I'm obsessed now about changing people's mindsets to recognize that how many times do we hear, I don't have time for that. I don't have the money for that. I don't know how to do that. My background doesn't have that. And I want to squash that. And I want to empower people to decide and recognize that they have the power themselves to actually make a change. And that the only thing, well, maybe not the only thing, but the biggest thing is themselves, and their mindset is in their way. And to be able to do that. So I'm fired up about the book, and I have a desire and a passion to write more books and make a big impact in that. And then second, I grew up, in the music, like we talked about. And I remember so many times thinking like, gosh, look at the football stadium, and the guys get all these like new pads and new helmets and multi-million-dollar stadium. And I remember feeling so frustrated. And even into college, we had a great football team, and I love going to sporting events, but it always felt like the arts and education didn't get the love. So I will be giving away $1 million a year before I am dead. It will be set up in perpetuity, and it will be towards arts and education for kids, especially, and in the form of instruments, in the form of grants for schools, in the form of I think about like we homeschool our kids, and my kids have like this amazing bin of markers and crayons and all kinds of stuff. And man, I just want every kid in America to have that same opportunity to have that arts and education side that I was so blessed with.
That's a great answer. I love the fact that you want to give back.
That's
So a lot of
legacy.
people- yeah, that's the legacy for you right there, is giving back and making a name for yourself. And it's like when people buy and build out part of like a hospital, like this is the Nathan Brooks Ward or the Mike Webb side of the building. It's because they gave back because they want to contribute and have a legacy. So hats off to you for being a good, wholesome dude and trying to give back to people. Is there anything we missed you want to go over?
People want to connect with me, like I mentioned, Nathan, or noquittersguide.com, all my handles, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Nathan Brooks, REI. And so feel free to connect with me there. And Barnes & Noble really helps at the moment on the book side of things. And
that's January 10th, correct?
January 10th. Yep. If you're in the Midwest. 2023. If you are in the Midwest, we also have a book launch live that's happening on that 13th, January 13th. And so we have 112 marked going and 160 interested. So we should have a pretty good crowd there. And so if you're in the Kansas City area, then make sure you're showing up to that too.
Nathan, we have an Audible version.
Yes, talking through with the publisher, we're just doing one thing at a time. So we'll have the book come out, and then eventually there'll be an Audible version. But
Okay.
We just put the one focus on that first.
I want to hear your voice for the 72,000 words. I want to hear your voice in my ear. That's what I want.
There's no possibility for it to go any other way, sir.
All
Dude,
right.
I love when the author is the narrator. I think it hits different. Like whenever they
his story.
they do it different. That's all I can say.
They have more passion about the topic because they wrote it. It's their life to live. But
Yeah.
All right, Nate, we're coming up on an hour and 11 minutes. Thank you for spending time with us. It means the world. We're looking forward to having you back for another hour and maybe 15 minutes next time and hit some more topics. If there's anything we can do for you, let us know. And thanks for listening, everybody, and spending some time with us here on First Responder Financial Freedom with Nate Brooks and the Three Stooges.
Thanks again for spending some time with us today. If you found value in anything you heard, please share with someone who may benefit. We look forward to connecting between shows in our Facebook group, First Responder Financial Freedom. Till next time.